Men of Reddit who proposed and she said no. What happened afterwards with your life? My mother told my father no 3 times. On the 3rd time he got wasted at a local bar and basically started pouring his heart out to anyone who'd listen. Mind you, it's a very small village in the Italian Alps and my father barely spoke Italian and no one in the village spoke English, including my mother. Word got back to my mom about this sad American at the bar, so she went to find him and she told him she'd marry him. My parents celebrated their 44th anniversary last month. She was an art major and I had just joined the army. We had been lovers since high school. I asked. She said no. She wanted to get her master's. We were friends for a while but we don't talk anymore. She works as a bartender I think now. I ended up getting married to my best friend. We've been married for more than a decade and have a 5-year-old son. Oh, I have a story about this. My friend A had been with his girlfriend B for years. So he decided he wanted to propose. What he didn't know is that B was also thinking about proposing to him. A proposed first. And B freaked out because she had already said her proposal and bought a ring. So she said no. Over the next week, B freaked out more and more, and refused to answer A's calls and messages. A then decided to use the money he had saved up to buy a plane ticket to Europe. What was supposed to be a 3-month trip through Western Europe turned out to be a year-long trip around the world. One day, A says that he's coming back and B decides to go and wait for him at the airport and propose to him there. It turns out that while being in Peru, A met a girl and they fell in love almost immediately. And got married in Peru. 5 years later, A and his Peruvian wife are still happily married and recently had a baby. While B hasn't still quite forgiven herself for ruining her relationship with A. As a woman who was engaged and the proposal was later revoked, it still stings a little 11 years later. When you're sure you're with the love of your life, losing them can really pop a hole in your life plans. We met in her home country of Germany while I was traveling. I knew I was in love. We dated long distance for a while. Me flying to Europe, her flying to the US. I suggested marriage so we could be together. She said no a few times. I didn't press. But I was patient and not being pushy. I knew she was worth the wait. Then it hit her that's how we could be together. If we got married, we could live in a country together. The difficulties of being born on a different patch of dirt. A few years later, I'm still married to my best friend and living with her in Germany. Not all no's stay no. Life goes on. I never saw her again. Less than a year later I met my wife. We've been together 15 years. My husband asked 3 times in the span of a couple months. We had dated for 3 years. He was ready. I wanted to graduate college first. Also, don't propose by handing your so a ring while you're both in the car on the way to Burger King. I'm low maintenance. But put some thought into it. We lived together for another 6 years until she changed her mind and told me that I should ask again. We were engaged for over a year and got married in 1991. We are still married. Have 3 children. And are both still very much in love. My dad proposed to a woman who said no. My dad was a violent alcoholic and she said she couldn't be with him unless he got clean. Took him a little while. But he did it. He wound up meeting my mom through a matchmaker and they've been married 25 years. If that woman never said no to him, he never would have gotten clean. It was the lowest point in his life. But it all brought him to my mom who makes him happier than ever. My dad talks to her sometimes. She got married to someone else and they had a son who died from a medical condition. This is the story of my parents. My dad asked my mom to marry him several times. She said no. Several times. One day my dad asked my mom to marry him yet again. She said yes. He freaked out and left her apartment and dumped her. 3 weeks later he hated his life without her and begged her to take him back and marry him. They were married 9 months later for 16 years until my mom passed from cancer. They loved each other so much and had such a deep appreciation for each other. That was 25 years ago. My dad has not remarried. No one will ever come close to my mama. Dated a woman for over 2 years and popped the question. First time she said I don't know. A couple months later I asked her again. She said maybe. I was pretty bent out of shape. But then I found out she was sleeping with several of my friends, so I dodged a bullet there really. I was a young Marine. I was only home during the weekends. Was dating this girl for about a year from my hometown. When I asked she said yes. Her dad, former Navy, kept saying we should wait. We put it off for a bit longer. Fast forward another year. She dumped me. Father informs me she has been sleeping with a lot of guys. Like more than 50 over the 2 years we dated. And was very happy I didn't marry her. And apologizes to me for her behavior. She then totally ghosting everyone including her family for about 6 months. Find out she moved 7 HRS away and was living under a house. Not a basement. Under a house with her new BF. She calls her mom to come get her. Mother and father ask me to go get her and bring her home. Good times. Good times. I asked her right out of high school. But she wasn't ready. We stayed together. Went to college at the same school. Spent the first year in separate dorms. Then moved in together. Got married a few years later. Our 20th is coming up. In 2017, Google came up with this idea to allow you to make photo books out of your Google Photos account. My girlfriend and I had been dating for almost 2 years and I knew she was the one I wanted to marry. So I created this wonderful photo book of all of our selfies together and ended it with a page made out of a photo I generated that said, "Will you marry me?" I then proceeded to put all these things into an album and build the photo book. What didn't occur to me at the time was that the album I put these in was a shared album and the other person gets a notification when you add new photos to it. And the other person that the album was shared with? My girlfriend. That evening. We had dinner and it all came out. She saw the photo. She wasn't ready. There were a few reasons why, but they were good reasons and smart reasons, mostly to do with timing, family, and finances. We weren't breaking up. We just weren't getting engaged at that time. A year later, we have fully discussed the concept of getting married. We went ring shopping. She picked her own ring. And by the time I actually did propose, we both knew what her answer would be. We celebrated our first wedding anniversary in April. It seems to have worked out so far. And the photo book is on a shelf to my left as we speak. I spoke to her about it beforehand. And she seemed really keen on the idea. So I decided to propose about a week after in front of all our friends. She was so shocked she picked me up off my knee and showed me away. Most of our friends were confused. Because everyone knew it was going to happen. And she said she was excited for it. I didn't know what to do. It was all really embarrassing, and later she explained she didn't mean no, she just didn't know what to say and was scared. She said yes after apologizing profusely, and just this year we celebrated our 9th anniversary. Edit. I'm happy that this comment blew up. But I feel like the next time I tell someone it as an icebreaker, they're going to say I read this on Reddit. Not my story, but someone I'm friends with. They both had speepty homes and became a couple at 14. Somewhere around 20 he proposed to her. She said she wasn't ready to commit yet. After that he'd propose to her every year partially in hopes she would be ready, but it was also kind of a ritual where he would show her that he's still serious. She would say no every time. In their late 20s he was done with his studies. She could see the finish line, so she told him she's ready, meaning marriage and eventually children. That's when he gets second thoughts about marrying the only woman he ever had a relationship with, and he wasn't sure if he was making a mistake. They went on a break. She went to the US from Europe to do her PhD at the MIT. They drifted apart more. She moved on and found a new long-term relationship with a partner that's a lot better for her, while he quickly regretted ending the relationship and started beeping whoever he could find on Tinder without being able to form a meaningful relationship after.